Hey there everyone, Chris Mack here, and today I want to talk about why I am no longer carrying 9mm for my EDC firearm and why I've transitioned to 357. Now this video is not a bash 9mm, and this video is not a 357 is the gold standard and the best caliber out there. Anyone can feel free to like what they do and don't. I'm just explaining why I am no longer carrying 9mm and why I prefer to carry a 357 now at this particular point in my life. So let's go ahead and get started with that with a few highlights here at the beginning. First, this video is not sponsored. I have no affiliate links of any kind to go with this video. This is truly, hey, this is my thoughts on this. I will put some links down below in the description for some other videos that helped guide me in making this decision. But again, not sponsored. None of these guys I'm going to mention know that I'm doing a video like this. There you go. Enough said. Okay, first and foremost, whenever it comes to me transitioning to 357 over 9mm is I did a lot of research on folks, and a lot of the videos I'll be linking in the description are of folks who did comparison videos of the two calibers, and not just like, okay, here's what such and such textbook says. They actually went out with their chronometers, they actually went out with ballistic gel, they went out to the range and compared these two rounds head to head in actual, what I would consider like real world application. One guy goes out and shoots ballistic gel, and then he shoots different types of meat and things like that as well. And it's like an actual, this isn't just what a chronometer says, but this is more so, this is what happens when you shoot a physical object, and here's what you get from that. And one of the important ones, and I'll put the comment in there for the video I'm talking about, of gel jump. And the one guy in his video, he shoots ballistic gel, and for the FBI standards, I'm not exactly sure what the actual standards are off the top of my head, but the 9mm definitely did the penetration standard, and the 357 was just like ever so slightly there. It was like either an inch above or inch below the FBI standard for penetration. But the difference was whenever you saw the 9mm go into the ballistic gel, it was like gel, bullet went in, there you go. When you saw it get shot with 357 though, the block of gel, which weighs several pounds, literally jumped up off the table and back down. And that's the difference for me of going like, okay, I did a video a long time ago, and I referenced Warrior Poet Society in that one, where they discuss the concept of overpenetration and how that's an issue. And I feel like 9mm, you're going to have an issue with overpenetration. If you're truly worried with what's behind you, then 357, you're not going to get the penetration, but you are going to get the knockdown power. That's one of the reasons why I transitioned to 357. The next thing is that I just feel like 9mm when compared to 357, and you'll hear a lot of the people in the videos that I reference where they say, okay, the folks who say that these are actually comparable rounds are comparing the weakest 357 to the most powerful 9mm. So if you're wanting a powerful 9mm, you have to be extremely selective. You're spending a lot of money on either specific hollow points, specific powder, or you're going to have to do your own hand loads and things like that to get a very hot round of 9mm to accomplish what a 357 can whenever it comes to power. It has to be a very hot 9mm, and you have to be comparing that to a really weak, like, bargain bin 357 round. So I think that's something else to take into consideration. When you're comparing these two, you're not comparing apples to apples. You're truly comparing the best of the best with the worst of the worst and saying, well, they're comparable. Not so much. The other reason why I like 357 is because it is a wheel gun, and I like the idea I live in Wyoming. I do like the idea of a wheel gun, and it's not necessarily for the cowboy style. I like it because of there's not as much to go wrong with it in the varying temperatures and things like that. You have to worry about pretty much one main spring versus you've got your firing pin springs, you've got your magazine springs, with it going very different temperatures here. I mean, we went last month, or yeah, just not too long ago, we went from temperatures of -30, -40 to temperatures of 30, 35 degrees over the course of a week. So those varying temperatures, you can really have a lot of wear and tear on your equipment from a mechanical standpoint. And I just feel like there's less moving parts when it comes to a revolver versus a semi-automatic pistol. Again, my preference, I'm not trying to knock one thing or the other. And also, while we're on that subject, I also feel like for those who are like, oh, 9mm is the best, you do you. And I'm not saying, again, I said from the beginning as well, that I'm not trying to bash 9mm. It just is not the caliber for me anymore. I'm not getting rid of any of my 9mm munitions or handguns that were tragically lost in a boating accident. So, yeah. Anyhow, because I truly think if we do end up in a SHTF situation or a revolution, civil war, whatever the heck you want to call it, if we do end up in something like that, every lug nut and their brother out in the world is going to be carrying 9mm, and that's going to be the most common caliber that you're going to be able to get to do a restock with. So I don't think there's anything wrong with continuing to keep them and having them around. It's just not for my EDC. Another thing to go along with that is now concerning of, again, why I made the switch, is weight and size. So I transitioned to a 357 Smith & Wesson, and it's a Ladysmith, and it's a 5-shot. It is much lighter than the Glock 19 that I primarily carried, and then I was carrying a Glock 26 for a while. But fully loaded, it was a lot lighter than a fully loaded Glock 19 was. Not by much, but it was lighter and it was noticeable. The other thing is whenever it comes to carrying spare ammunition, I do have a little Galco pouch that carries 6 rounds, and it is extremely light in comparison to a fully loaded Glock 19 magazine. So weight was another issue of what do I really need to carry versus what I could carry and what I had been carrying in the past. To go along with that, again, living in Wyoming, do I think I'm going to end up in a mass shooting scenario in Wyoming? Unlikely. More than anything, I'm probably going to have to drop some roadkill that I happen to crack on the way home. And that's the more likely, more probable use of my sidearm at this point. But also that if I did need to use it for a self-defense scenario, there's nothing wrong with a 357. It's going to be highly capable. And also whenever it comes to using a revolver over a semi-auto, I'm not going to get into this big debate, but for me, looking at the whole of what is more probable. Yes, I know some people are going to bring up well, what about the Deacon's drill? What if you have to make a shot that far? I'm sorry, if I'm making a 20, 30-yard shot, should I actually be taking that shot? And secondly, is that person actually a threat to me? You need to think about these things whenever you go to court. It's not a simple cut and dry like, oh yeah, I'm the hero. I mean, we all know what happened to the Kenosha Kid. So lots of court, lots of things, and you'll even see some interviews of him now saying he's still actively being sued, despite the fact that the court trial itself is done. So you need to think long term whenever it comes to liability and what you would end up doing in a court of law for a shooting. So I like the fact that a revolver coming to the argument of you don't have to worry about it coming out of battery if you have to truly put it against someone. And I think that's probably going to be the most likely probable is if you do end up in a tussle where you are truly protecting yourself, that person had better be within the golden threes of 3 shots, 3 yards, and like 3 seconds, I think is what the rule is. But your average firefight is, or maybe it's 30 seconds, but still it's those threes of that scenario. So I feel like you're more likely going to end up with barrel pushed against someone, and in the words of Clint Smith, where he says, yeah, no, this thing works. You're laying on the ground. This is your get off me gun. You put it in their chest and you pull the trigger. Now you're going to have to take a shower afterwards, but the threat will be neutralized. So I feel like that's a more practical use for a self-defense firearm. All right, and for my last 2 points concerning my reasoning for transitioning from 9mm to 357 are both personal beliefs and concepts and experience as well. So for those of you that don't know me, I've been in healthcare for over 20 years in EMS and in nursing. I've spent a lot of time in ICU in the back of ambulances. That's my career in a nutshell. With that being said, I've seen a lot of people shot in my career. I used to live in Colorado in the big city, and I also did a lot of work in Virginia as well, in one of the bigger cities as well. Seen my fair share of GSWs in my career. With that being said, I've also seen people shot with many different types of calibers as well. 22 long rifle, 380, 9mm, 357, 38 special, 12 gauge, slug and shot. I think those are the main ones, but I've seen a few other oddball ones here and there, but those are the big ones. And whenever it comes to self-defense with your firearm, the goal is to stop the threat, which to me means you want to put this person down. Unfortunately, that's the situation you find yourself in. Because if you're going to pull it, not shoot them, and the goal is to not drop them, then you're brandishing a weapon and then you have legal issues. So the goal is to drop the person in question. With that being said, again, this is my personal experience. This is not some data pulled off of some website or some critical care nursing manual or anything like that. This is not a in-depth research study. This is my own personal experience. When it comes to people I've seen shot with 9mm versus 357, here's the difference. 9mm, 50-50 on whether or not they live or die. Truly, you got a good gambit. In my 20 plus years of healthcare experience, I have never personally seen anyone shot with a 357 that's lived. That's the difference. If the goal is to protect myself and my family, and the goal is to put the perpetrator down, that alone tells me I'm carrying the wrong thing here. And kind of what sparked me on this journey to begin with is I was having a conversation with a coworker of mine who's also seen a fair share of GSWs in their career as well at bigger hospitals before living where we do now. And we were both kind of like, yeah, she could not recall anyone shot with 357 that lived in her career either, and was like, yeah, I'm carrying the wrong gun. So that's I had that conversation a few months ago, and that slowly got me on this journey of like, yeah, it's probably time to transition to a 357. And then the last point that I want to make here, and for those of you that hunt, you'll understand. If you don't hunt, whatever, but you'll understand the concept here. Now, I'm not asking which would you, I'm asking which should you. Like, you know the answer deep down in your soul what the answer to this question is. If you had an opportunity to go deer hunting and you were offered one of two rifles, would you take deer hunting a Ruger PC 9mm carbine, or would you take a Henry 357 lever action rifle, also considered a carbine technically, depending on whose rule book you're looking at here? Which would you take deer hunting? Again, not which would you, but which should you? And you know deep in the depths of your heart, oh yeah, if I'm going deer hunting, I should probably take the 357 lever action over the 9mm carbine. That just makes sense. Let's put that into perspective here. Depending on where you live and what kind of deer you're hunting, whether you're going after a muley or a whitetail, your average deer, there are bigger and smaller, but your average deer is going to be between 120 and 180 pounds. So you mean to tell me you would not use a 9mm to hunt a 120 to 180 pound deer, but you'd be willing to bet your life on a 9mm to take down the idiot at the bar who's causing a scene and has now pulled a gun on the waitress who weighs 220 and is hammered? You would take a 9mm against him, but not against a 150-pound deer. Think that one through for me. All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed this one. Again, this is just kind of my own personal thing. I do have lots of reference videos down below from different people with different actual ballistic tests and stuff like that. And please check those out. Again, not sponsored, not paid. Don't have a dog in this fight other than this is my own personal journey, and this is why I did it. All right, so thank you so much for watching, and as always, it's Chris Mack.